Welcome to the last sharing socks of the month of June. We'll hope that things go better in the future. I'm Leigh Allan, Southside Sox duty geezer, and with me my son and West Coast correspondent Will, who last night, we're recording this on Thursday, went to the Wednesday night game, trekked all the way from North Hollywood down to Anaheim to watch the White Sox, and boy, it was worth it, huh?
Oh, amazing. I mean, first off, you get that beautiful scenic drive on the 5 all the way down there, in which you get to drive somewhere between 3 miles per hour and 14 miles per hour if you're lucky. What a waste of time. That was absolutely abysmal to watch. I mean, from warm-ups on, we got there a little early, and it turns out our theory that no one stretches properly before a game is 100% correct. I've never seen guys loaf more during warm-ups than this team. I mean, you've got guys running with the rubber band as the trainer's pulling them, and you can just see slack in the rubber band. There's slack there because they're not running hard ever. It was just a disaster. I was there with a former, at least, maybe still a little bit, Southside Sox guy, Bill Mankey, bunch of other Sox fans. Sox fans turned out, and Angels fans were actually very pleasant to us. It was a good environment. The Angels employees were constantly complimenting the City Connect jersey that I was wearing and Bill was wearing. We even made it onto TV, so you probably, even before my dad mentioned it, knew I was at the game and knew that my wife had enjoyed an ice cream cone.
A blue one. What's with blue ice cream?
Okay, first off, there was no blue ice cream. That is definitely just
on the TV. It looked like blue ice cream.
Okay, well, it was just chocolate vanilla swirl, no blue. I gotta swatch that right now. I think because someone was taking a picture of the TV. Because no way, we're not going anywhere near blue ice cream. Come on, I can't believe you even accused us of that just now. This is not starting well. But yeah, I mean, it was a fun night to go and watch a major league team beat a little league team, and that's pretty much what we saw.
You really, most games, I mean, even if they lose, unless it's a complete blowout, which it wasn't, it was just hapless.
Yeah,
you have something to cheer about.
Yeah,
the only Sox run, the guy was only on base from an error and scored on a wild pitch. That's not something that brings on enthusiastic cheering when it's run number 1 and you're still down by 3. I don't know.
And
Did you get it? This is my question from being in the park, and I know you're not sitting in the dugout. You're just one of thousands of fans in the park. On TV, I get the impression, and from the comments I read, so do a lot of people, that this team is just dead.
Yeah.
That it is so flat, it might as well just be a piece of paper across there. Is that just TV because it's a bad filter for a lot of things? Or being in the ballpark, did you have that same feeling?
Exact same feeling. And I mean, we were even, we were in the second row, we were cheering on these guys and just trying to get some energy into them. And I mean, it is just dead out there. And there's no real explanation for why it should be that dead out there. There's just an attitude on this team right now that is absolutely abysmal. And, the number one way to change that quickly.
We all know, the whole White Sox world knows. I think even Jerry Reinsdorf
fire Tony. I mean, I don't know how you don't fire him at this point. He is a textbook candidate for being fired mid-season. He checks every single box of the type of manager who would get fired before the All-Star break. It makes no sense that he's managing this team. It is absolutely abysmal watching this this club. I mean,
And
Kopech
I
gave
shouldn't
us a
say
little
this.
something.
I shouldn't admit it as a White Sox fan of more than half a century since I first moved to Chicago in 1971. If a little genie put in my ear, if they lose 10 games in a row, he'll be fired, I would root for them to lose 10 games in a row. I should never say that I would root for that, but I would. Because I think losing 10 in a row would be worth it to get rid of him because they'd get them all back.
Yeah, 100%. Oh, absolutely. You could stretch it to 12 for me and I'm still in. You know, the Angels went on a similar streak. They fired Joe Madden, who is really inarguably a better manager than TLR at this point in their lives. And I would happily support a 12-game losing streak. I mean, we essentially go on 12-game losing streaks all the time. We just throw one win in there every now and then from total luck that we faced a single A pitcher or something like that. Yeah, I would gladly support it. I would, if last night was the first of the 10 in a row we need to get Tony fired, give me these next 9. Just roll over and die, White Sox, because you're doing that anyway. So let's just make it official so that we can get Tony out of there. I have never watched a less inspired baseball team. And I mean, I was in the 2012, 2010. I was going to Cubs games on the regular. I was living by Wrigley. I was going to see that Cubs team that was maybe going to lose 100 games. I was watching them play a Pirates team that was going to lose 100 games. And while there were, often 7 errors in the game, it was more inspired baseball than what I watched from the White Sox last night. Because those guys were all at least trying. They just sucked. These guys seem to not even be trying to win baseball games. And I know that that's an easy thing to sit back and say as someone watching, but we're not dumb. We've been watching this game for a long time. You can see when guys are loafing constantly. They're not setting themselves up. The number of fly balls yesterday where the outfielders did not set themselves up to make, with runners on base, to make the throw into the infield, it was every single one. I would have tagged up first to second every single time on the White Sox yesterday if I was on the Angels, because there's just no fundamental baseball being played whatsoever. Running to first base, I saw 2 guys run hard the whole game. Luis Robert on the spectacular diving catch made at third, because it's embarrassing if you get thrown out on that play. And then Sebi ran hard once. So you got a catcher who still has something to prove, running harder than anyone else on the team. And then you have a guy who should beat out almost every ground ball, having to kick it into gear for what felt like the first time in months, to not be thrown out.
Of course, and part of that, and I do think they're just dead out there. But this instruction that was given apparently to 5 players, the top 5 players in the batting order, positions 1 through 5, that don't bother hustling on a routine ground ball, which, boy, that works well with every coach who's trying to teach kids how to play this game, or anybody in any sport. They're being told essentially to loaf. If you can't run hard for 90 feet, that's a third of the distance somebody's great grandmother runs to catch a bus when she's halfway down the block. It's nuts. Then you shouldn't be in the major leagues. And if it's because you're hurt, excuse me, then you should be in the injured list. Somebody else should be brought up to play real hard and probably play real badly, but you should be on the injured list recuperating so that when you come back, you can run hard all the time, whether it's to first base or to catch a fly ball. It's just nuts that you would ever be told, don't really hustle. Just crazy. And that they're in that condition is insane. And apparently, what was the excuse for not at the game you were at last night? Leury's up with two guys on base, and at that point only 2-0. And a lefty is on the mound who cannot leave. It's his third batter. And Andrew Vaughn is on the bench.
Yeah.
And he doesn't pinch hit. And the story was, we're resting his legs. The guy is a 24-year-old professional baseball player, Major League Baseball player, with a day off the next day. They're not playing today.
Who also hasn't been playing in the first 7 innings.
Right.
So, you rested his legs. You achieved that. How much can you blow out his legs in one at bat? I mean, as you said, he's 24. He's 24. If I was on that team and I could hit like Andrew Vaughn, and I watched Lurie go up at the most pivotal moment of the game against a left-handed pitcher, and the coach was like, "We're resting your legs," I'd cold cock that coach in the face. "Sorry, Tony," and I would be like, "Tony, I'm firing you. I'm going up to bat." Like, have you? I can't say that the players aren't arguing their case to get in these games in these moments, but if you're a good hitter, aren't you going up to Tony being like, "Hey man, legs are feeling good. Legs are feeling good. Those first 7 innings I had off, that was nice. And we're off tomorrow, so let's do this." I mean, what the heck? It's just, it's pathetic. And you're absolutely right, this loafing thing, if you can't run hard to first base, and I'll also add, because their warm-ups were as pathetic as I've ever seen from a professional sports team. If you can't run to first base without getting hurt every time, you shouldn't be in the major leagues. I'd be way more interested in pulling up 9 guys from Birmingham and putting them on the field tonight and just seeing what happens. Because they're going to play harder than the Sox have played in any game this entire season. We're going to lose the game, but it would be interesting to see a bunch of guys who are trying to get the job get to have the job for a day and just see what happens. Because, I mean, Anderson, why is Anderson not running hard to first? We know these infielders make errors. We've seen the third baseman throw it away. The shortstop then throws it away later. Running hard is what gets people to make errors. I mean, that is true from Little League on up. That's why we say run hard to first base from when you're a little kid. Because if there's no pressure on the infield to make the play, then they make the play. And if you are running hard, even if you're not that fast, if you're running hard, then you have added the difficult element to being an infielder. Yes, catching the ball, of course, but you practice that all the time. You're always practicing catching a ground ball. Major leaguers are almost always going to catch a ground ball. If you give a major leaguer time to make the play, I mean, there's no chance that they're going to mess it up. Like, you have to be running hard, and we learned that from a young age. I was a guy who didn't hit the ball hard, but I was very fast. Half the time I got on base was because I ran hard to first, and I made the guys in the field make a play. And in high school, they're going to mess up a lot. Even good players are going to mess up when you put that kind of speed pressure on them. We've got fast runners. This is the thing that blows my mind. We're like 38 of 40 for stolen bases.
Yeah,
so
we've been caught stealing twice.
Yeah, so
now, that's Robert, Anderson, and Engel, basically. That's almost all of it. But that's a lot of speed, and of course Engel's out right now. But I mean, it's great. And another thing that gets me on this same front, and it's interesting, and I really wish I could hear what happened when the loafing thing started. There was a game, I don't remember the game, but it was a while back. And Stoney and Jason were talking about it. And Stoney brought up a story about Andrew Jones and Bobby Cox pulling him off the field for loafing and telling him, "Well, you're either hurt or you're tired. And either way, that's not good. You shouldn't be out there. So let's get you off the field for a while and see if you can recover from this problem." It's like Andrew Jones missed 2 games the rest of his life.
I I remember that game. I watched that game. It was on TBS. It was during those TBS days where they made you watch the Braves all the time. And I remember watching that game, and the coaches of every team I was on for the rest of my life reference that game.
So okay, Stoney and Jason are talking about it, right? And they're obviously pretty bothered by this whole idea of being told to loaf it down to first or cruise or whatever it is. And it stopped. They did that for about 2 games and it stopped. They never said another word. And there was a case last year because they know who signs their paychecks.
Yeah.
And I think they used to be tell it like it is, guys, but since LaRusso's been there, they're not. And there was a case last year, and I don't remember what it was. I'm almost as old as the Hall of Famer baseball person, so my memory's shot. But it might have been a follow-up to Your Mean, and may have been something else entirely. But where the two of them were really getting on something and saying that this is essentially this is wrong. I mean, doing it gently because they do know who signs the paychecks. But they were saying, you got to change this. This is wrong. And then one day, it was a theme. And then one day it just stopped. And that somebody came down and said, this stops now. And I think it happened again with this thing with running. They're not talking about that anymore. And I think they got the word up. No, that's not your job to talk about whether our guys actually play like they want to win.
100%. And I think that's just 2 examples. And I think it's happened actually many times because Jason and Steve are obviously very, very smart when it comes to baseball. They know, in general, they're smart guys. But when it comes to baseball, they're as smart as you can get. And when something wonky happens, they tend to comment on it. And you can tell that the producers who are getting word from someone else are saying, drop that. Drop it. Move on. Because they react to the nonsense when it happens. And you can tell they're getting a note slid or something like that. And this is not a conspiracy theory. I've worked in television. This is how things happen with producers. And they will just tell you what to say and not say. And, it's a shame. But if they slide you a note that says, stop talking about this, or if you go to a meeting where they say, don't talk about Tony, don't talk about the loafing thing, you're not going to talk about it. And that's, this isn't, politics. This isn't Supreme Court stuff. This is baseball. So keep your job and just don't talk about it. I get that. I don't disrespect Steve and Jason for not going down.
While we're on them, particularly on Sony, I'm not on Twitter. But I'm reading things from people who are on Twitter on how Stoney's kind of lost it and attacking anybody who isn't totally supportive at all times of everything about the team and telling them to get lost or leave. We don't need fans like you. That's weird.
Well, okay. Well, first off, I will defend him a little bit there in that White Sox fans on Twitter, while some of you are great, most of you are heinously behaved on that app. And the stuff that people write and tag Steve in there's a lot that's really, really too much. So I actually am going to defend Steve and that attitude on Twitter because people feel like they can say anything on there, as we know, whether you're the president, former president, or on down to baseball fans. And when a team is playing this badly and this uninspired, people get attitudes on Twitter. I don't have as big of a problem. I would not say that Stoney's losing it, but it is probably relentlessly negative at him on Twitter right now because people really feel like they can say whatever they want to Jason and Steve, and just by saying it counts. And I would hold back on any reservations that Steve is because Twitter is, especially White Sox Twitter right now, is just a really, really awful place. It is awful. It's a whole bunch of people in a bad mood who feel like they can say whatever they want to whoever they want. So Steve has always been very good on Twitter, responding to people who actually want to talk about the game and backlashing at people who just want to say negative things about people. And of course, we have a lot of that. That being said, I can't defend them all the way. I mean, you can easily not respond. So that is it's weird to respond to the negativity is what I'll give you on that. But we're running long in this first half. Let's take a break. We'll come back. We can pick up on this, and then we should talk a little bit about what's going on moving forward and these pitchers. Oh boy. But yeah, let's take a quick break and we'll be right back on Sharing Socks. All right, welcome back to Sharing Socks. I actually think it's important that we have talked about all of this stuff today, not because we're geniuses or experts on effort or anything like that, but we do have eyes and we do know the game of baseball, and what we can see is pretty underwhelming and pathetic. I agree with you that there is some sort of stranglehold on the announcement team at this point in terms of how they are allowed to critique the team. Of course, La Russa is just a virus coursing through the veins of this organization at this point. There is really no better way for me to describe it than he is a virus. He is. And whether it's on-field stuff or off-field stuff, he is the opposite in every way of what this team needs. And obviously, you and I have been anti-La Russa from the start. We love being proven right. And in this circumstance, we've been proven beyond right, way beyond right. And which is also where Tony sits in the political spectrum. But in this circumstance, we have to move on. We have to move on. I mean, it's not fun to watch baseball anymore. I was sitting with Bill last night at the game, and Bill was like, see, if we got rid of Major League Baseball, if we didn't have the White Sox, then what? Baseball would be fun again? I was like, yeah, it might be. But yeah, so let's talk a little bit about these three games. Obviously, Tuesday, the White Sox had an explosive offensive game. They do this thing now where they don't hit for 10 days and then they just go off for one day.
Against some really, really horrible pitching.
Really horrible.
That helped a lot.
I mean, that was kind of the example I gave earlier of every now and then we get to play against single A pitchers, and that's what happened there. I mean, it was just terrible pitching. We took advantage of it because how could you not, even with our effortless loafing ball club, if you hit it out of the park, you get to loaf around the bases. So we did that for a game. And then the game before was Giolito, who is done.
Boy, that would be a terrible. It would be terrible to think that Lucas can't straighten it out. I mean, he's been so good since that year in the commercial in 2018. But for three years and change, a really, really good the stopper. If things are going badly, in comes Giolito when we turn it around.
Yeah,
and he's really struggling again. Is it post-COVID? Is it that he bulked up too much and body's not loose like it used to be? He's saying it's a mechanical thing. If it's a mechanical thing, he can fix it. And the guys, our pitching coaches, coached him since he was probably 14. So they should be able to figure it out. But if it's mechanical, it's taken a long time. That's the kind of thing you think would be fixed in a couple games.
Yeah, I sure. Hopefully it's mechanical, but it as you're saying, if it's mechanical, and we've known this for a few starts, who's not fixing it? Who's not working on it? Is Katz not figuring out what the mechanical issues are? Is Giolito just not able to execute this change in mechanics? And it could be because of the bulking up. you don't have to be jacked to be a great baseball pitcher. I mean, we've seen that forever. You know, Randy Johnson he was obviously strong, but he was very slender dude, and he's one of the greatast pitchers to ever
For our team, Chris
play
Sale.
the game. Chris Sale's a great example. I mean, there's tons of examples of guys like that. If that's the case, then the strength and conditioning coach who should have been fired already should be fired all over again, because it's that person's job to make sure that these guys don't do that. You know, that their bodies are in a place where their mechanics can stay the same. And obviously, our strength and conditioning coach is the worst in all of baseball. I don't even know who it is.
You should say
if we even
plural,
have
because we've gone through a bunch.
Great. Well, they all suck. But we got Giolito at a 5.19 ERA right now, and it is June 30th. So we are past the point of, still a lot of time left. It's early. A 5.19 ERA heading into July is just outright bad. He has the worst ERA of any starter who is still with the team. Keuchel is the only person who had a worse ERA through his starts.
Technically, Lynn is 6.19, but he's only.
Lynn, I think we actually can just say, you know, he's not back yet entirely. But you know, you look at the other guys on the team, and you've got Kopech at 2.78, and actually Kopech looked fairly sharp last night between the first and the fifth. He looked pretty good there. You got Cease at 2.56. You got Cueto at 3.33. With those starting pitching numbers, I mean, we should be winning about 3 out of every 5 games. I mean, those are good numbers. Those are just inarguably very good numbers. We can't give them any run support, so these guys don't win any games.
Well, it's not just run support. You know, the team ERA, and it's going to be interesting playing the Giants. You know, a couple of weeks ago, I mentioned that the one kind of wraparound, all-inclusive defensive stat that Fangraphs does, they call DEF, right, for defense, I guess. And the Sox were dead last. We're not dead last anymore. You know who is?
No.
The Giants. So this should be a real clown show this weekend of defense.
Wow. Yeah.
They've been really terrible all year on defense, and in both cases, the team ERAs are in the worst third. The team FIPs are in the top third. That's because nobody can go get the damn ball.
Right. Yeah. Well, what's interesting about that is the Giants are still 40-34 in a much harder division. What the difference
is between the two teams?
One has a coach.
The manager.
Yeah.
They've got an absolutely excellent manager. And we got, I don't know what. There's seriousness, Elliot. Yeah, it's going to be a battle. The first game, Alex Cobb, ERA 5.48 and a 2.88 batting average against Lynn with a 6.19 ERA. And now, of course, we luck out. We do not face in San Francisco by far their best pitcher, perhaps one of the best pitchers going. Some guy named Rodon. I don't know if you've heard of him, but
I'm not familiar with his work, but I'm sure he's fine.
You know, Carlos had I think 2 bad games in a row, and since then he's given up 7 hits and 20-some innings with
wow.
28, 30 strikeouts. I mean, he's just been absolutely unhittable since then. So whether it was mechanical or he was having a bad day or whatever, he's completely recovered from that. Saturday's game, that's going to be a good one. Logan Webb against Dylan Cease. That's their number 2 best pitcher. That could be a real ball game there. A couple of guys who are doing real well. And Sunday, and I don't even know how to say Sclafani. Is that how you say his name?
Yeah.
Sclafani. His ERA is 10. He's just recently back from the 60-day. He's had 2 starts since coming off the 60-day, totaled 5 2/3 innings and 12 earned runs. So this is the guy I think we can hit.
I don't know. I mean, if we hit, we're not going to run hard to the bases anyway. So what's the point of hitting the ball? Uh, that is, to me, on paper, 3 games we should win based on my expectations for this team. Those are 3 games we should easily win. If you told me at the beginning of the year we got Lance Lynn, Dylan Cease, and Lucas Giolito facing those up against those 3 pitchers, I would be like, boom, sweep. Bring out the brooms. Here we go. I was a lot more accurate on predicting the Baltimore series outcome than you were.
Well, I said it would be 3-1. Did I stipulate who would have the 3?
Technically, I don't think you did, so I stand corrected. I shouldn't accuse you of that. We don't even need to talk about how dreadful that whole experience was.
I want to mention one thing in that series that I thought
Sure.
was really, really cool, really classy. And there was, in the losing effort, of course, when Cedric Mullins made an absolutely incredible racing full speed diving catch to rob Andrew Vaughn of, well, it'd be a triple, except because he's not supposed to run, so it'd be a double. But anyhow, Vaughn got down to first base, and we talk about, Stoney likes to use the phrases as well. He gets that pitch in on you, you just tip your hat and go back to the bench. But we don't usually mean it literally. Vaughn, and I thought this was so classy, he went past first base and he literally tipped his hat to Mullins. And I thought, that is cool. That may be the only thing cool in the last who knows how long with this team.
There was another example of a very similar thing where Josh Harrison got robbed on an incredible play a few days ago, and he got to first and pretended to throw his helmet at the fielder in a very friendly way. And that just kind of tells you that these guys do want to be here. They do want to play the game. Their attitudes are not totally in the gutter for the most part. It's just, as we've said and will continue to say, sorry, listeners, it's management. It's management. When you go into let's say like an Arby's and the employees suck, the service sucks. And I'm not hating on actual Arby's. I've never had a bad Arby's experience, to be honest, but a fast food chain. We won't get specific. And the employees suck. They're mean. They do a bad job. That almost never has anything to do with those actual employees. Like, those are normal people who are just doing their life. They're doing a job. Maybe they're not that excited about it, but it's management. It's management. Because you could go into that same restaurant with those same employees with the new management, and they're incredible. And it's not, people aren't just inherently bad at things. They're not just inherently rude at service. They're just not. It all comes from the top. And trickle down's a sensitive term, but when it comes to getting results from the people who are working for you, and I realize in baseball it's hazier, but I would say like the players are working for the manager in a theoretical way. It trickles down from the top, the attitude and the effort, and that is what we're seeing here, 100%. It's coming from Reinsdorf, it's trickling down through Tony, and then it trickles down into the way that they carry themselves on the field. But those little moments where you see Vaughn tip his hat or you see Harrison messing around, that tells you what this team wants to be. But it's just squashed by absolutely terrible management from the top all the way down. And it's depressing. That's what makes this team depressing to watch. It's not even that it's not fun. It's that we are watching a depressed baseball team right now because leadership is so unbelievably terrible. I am at the point now, and I've held on a lot longer than most of my friends have about this season. And I actually don't think this season's over. I think this season is salvageable. However, I only think it's salvageable if they fire Tony. If we do not fire Tony, I do 100% believe this season's over. I don't think we're winning the division. I don't think we're winning the wild card. I don't think we're getting anything unless we fire Tony La Russa by the All-Star break. We have to come back from the All-Star break with new life. And if we don't, this season's over. And we're going to send maybe one guy to the All-Star game. Tim will be a reserve. That's probably going to be it. You could, if Vaughn can stay hot.
Position player.
Position players is what I mean.
Yeah, Cecil go for sure, and probably Kopech.
And potentially Kendall Graveman if there's a.
We get into the
But yeah, we have to turn over this management. We absolutely have to. It's absurd that it hasn't happened already. It's offensive to the fans that it hasn't happened already. Obviously, they've got the announcers programmed to not talk about it or the prospect of it. This team is a shell of what it should be. And I know all the players listen to this, and I'm sorry that we've been so hard on you guys today, but know that we actually think you can do this.
But I don't think it's on them. And I think
Exactly.
It's not on them. They're being psychologically crushed.
And they were able to overcome that in the past. And that's what we said as soon as La Russa got hired. You and I were on this podcast saying they're going to have to overcome what La Russa is going to try to make this team. And they did for a while. We still saw the energy and the excitement. We saw the bat flipping. And then La Russa has now just driven this team into the ground to the point where they can't. And that's the point I'm making about management. These guys are not inherently bad, just like those restaurant workers are not inherently bad at working in a restaurant. But when management drives you to be your worst self, that's the product that the fans and the customers receive. And that is what we are getting right now from the White Sox. Completely uninspired, dead inside baseball. That is about all the time we have for today. Do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up?
No, I do. If for all those players listening, I do recommend when you are in San Francisco that the seafood there can be just absolutely amazing. And
very true. Very true. So stock up on those oysters, enjoy them, and try to get us some wins out there on the West Coast. Oh man, I wish I could go up to see the games, but after driving to Anaheim, I've learned my lesson, and I will certainly not be making the 5-hour drive to San Francisco to see a baseball game. But thank you all so much for listening. Hopefully next week, we keep saying this. Hopefully next week we'll be back with some better news, and I'm sure if we get lucky and La Russa's fired at some point, we will have an emergency episode to celebrate. So a good emergency. And we will see you next time. Hang in there, Sox fans. And we will see you next time on Sharing Sox.